Добрий день, я вітаю всіх, хто приєднався.
Hello everyone, I am Olga Atamanova. Media Center Ukraine continues its work. 946 days since the Russian full-scale invasion, we have invited you to present the research of the reintegration of Ukraine. So IREX program, together with the Ukrainian Veteran Fund and the InfoSapiens Research Agency, they conducted the survey to evaluate, to assess the services available to veterans, both demand and supply. We have here Uliana Bakh, she is director of the IREX program, Kostiantyn Tatarkin, advisor and veteran, Ruslana Velychko-Tryfoniuk, she is deputy minister for Veterans Affairs and European Integration, and Oleksandr Rizenko, who is head of the department on interaction with personnel from Ukrnafta. First of all, let us look at the results of the survey. Uliana and Kostiantyn. Hello everyone. I will start with a short prehistory why we decided to do this. IREX in Ukraine has launched the Reintegration Veterans Program in 2019 with the help of Americans, so it was even before the full-scale invasion. We have developed all that we were doing on the basis of consultation with our stakeholders and partners in 2021. We understood that we should go further and deeper. So the large-scale invasion, of course, has changed quite a lot. The scale has grown and so on. So in 2024, we again decided to look at what's happening and understand what our defenders who have come home or will come home really need, what they face, and shape our help respectively. The survey was conducted in this year's, in 2024. I give the mic to my colleague Kostiantyn, who'll brief you on the results, and then I'll tell you how we will use the results, because we think that it is not the survey that is the reason for the survey, but the use of the data. Hello everyone. We'll start with as every survey starts with a methodology. We have talked to 51 respondents. We have tried to embrace to involve not only veterans, but also representatives of those who provide services to different veterans, to members of their families, to members of the people who have died in action, and briefly and then in detail. First of all, and the main thing is that all the respondents have said that the sphere of state-provided services has some organizational problems. It's understood because the number of veterans has grown manifold, and the target audience has grown 2.5 times since 2020, and this is understood both in the Ministry for Veterans and in different locations around the country. It is very important to people were saying that the state has to shape the policy while the services should be provided at the level of communities, territorial communities. The level of trust in the state is decreasing, while the level of trust in communities is increasing. And we are seeing these trends and observing this trend since 2019, after the first wave of demobilization. The veterans think that the state does not monitor and does not know their needs and requirements. And that's good that we know this now, when there's no huge waves of demobilization, because sooner or later demobilization will be with us. And of course, respondents think that the level of services provided is unsatisfactory, but we also think that it is good that we know this now, because we will have more time to deal with this. Medical requirements, the respondents say that there's enough as far as number of services is concerned, but the quality is lacking. We also see that there's quite a lot of done in the prosthetics sphere, but there's a need to increase efforts in different other medical spheres like teeth care, tooth care, reproduction organs, reproductive organs, and so on. We are trying to establish cooperation between civil and military doctors. We have quite a lot of doctors, civilian doctors, who will provide and are providing services to the veterans, but there's a lot of bureaucracy in this. It is very, very much complicated and sometimes almost non-inclusive at all. In the future, we would like to switch to the psychology sphere. Of course, almost everyone said that there are still preconceptions, and they are not very comfortable to talk to psychologists and psychotherapists. We have to admit that stigma is still there, and of course there's a lack of specialists in territorial communities. So we see quite a field of work for us in this. Education and self-education. We have to deal with employers who do not want to employ veterans, and we have to admit that there are socially responsible companies, but unfortunately not all of them are socially responsible. And of course, one of the problems is small employers, small number employers who need help themselves. We have to introduce ethics of the behavior with veterans in working collectives and personnel. We see quite a lot of veterans having conflicts with those who come back or who join production, where there are people who actually avoid combat participation. This is quite a problem. I think that Oleksandr will talk about this, what is their policy, how they work. Of course, there's a problem of inclusive job stations. There's a state-funded program that helps to compensate for the organization of an inclusive job station, but we also need to think about inclusive environment, because let's say a person can work at an inclusive desk but does not have an inclusive toilet to go to. So we have to provide for everything that concerns those people at their workplaces. So the state, businesses, and NGOs can and should stimulate the entrepreneurial initiative of veterans. We see quite a lot of programs in this sphere, and we, on the part of IREX in Ukraine, want to develop this sphere. As far as benefits are concerned, I think that the most important thing is that experts who were surveyed said that the state is appointing some benefits to the veterans, but they're being paid for from local budgets. At the moment, local communities do not have enough money. They are stating this publicly, and we see and feel that there is institutional conflict here. Besides, there was quite a request to the state to not promise free accommodation and free land, because there were statements to the effect that the veterans will be provided with pensions, high pensions, and other things. However, veterans do not expect much. And if they are promised something and they don't get something, then their trust in the state falls. It's better to promise less, but provide for what you have promised. So there's quite a lot of work in this sphere as well. Another important element is the transition to peaceful life. I know from my own experience that family is your most important component. We've been talking about this for the last 2 years, that first of all the veteran comes back to his or her family. So the state and the communities have now the time to work with families, and they have the time to identify the family as a stakeholder, important stakeholder, until a veteran are still in combat. As seen by veterans and their families, while they are at the front or in military service, their life is full of events, while when they are in civilian life, there are no events at all. And many people who come back, in many cases, they would, because of this lack of activity, even if they are wounded, would up and go to the front line where they won't shoot, but they will cook for their comrades, they will drive a car or something like this. We come again to the need to work with families even today. And of course there's also the rise of risks in using psychoactive substances. This is what respondents have said, that this problem is already there. We have to collect more information in this respect and decide what to do with this. Another very interesting block is the role of socium and role of communities and how the veterans are treating this. Their experience does form an active position, active stance in this. We've been asking several years ago, we learned then that more than 60% of veterans after demobilization became more socially active. At the moment we have something like 3 million people of the target audience, and the war is still going on. This means that we will have a huge number of people who will be part of the socium and who will be active in their social life. Of course, there's a lack of veterans hubs and veteran spaces. I know that the ministry is working on this. We as IREX are ready to support this work because the experience of the United States after the Vietnam War does prove that the veterans who have lost their trust in state were very easy to involve in working or communicating in some hubs or spaces in their small cities or towns where they were at once offered the services that the state was offering. 60 or 70 years ago, the U.S. was restoring the capacity of their veterans like this. I think that we will be able to do this much faster. We will not need 70 years. Of course, we need to accompany veterans. We need to speak words of gratitude towards them. So these were the brief results, and the site for the veterans reintegration in UA site contains more about this. We will, of course, share all that we know. Uliana, about distribution. I would like to tell you about how we will use these results, because this is the aim, to inform our activity, and we also hope that our partners, the ministry and our business partners and our civil society partners will take a note of these results and will take into account real demands and requests of the veterans. So we are now launching the new stage of the realization of our veterans program. We will continue our research. We will share the results with you, with our partners. At the moment, we as a society in Ukraine have an opportunity to prepare for the return of our defenders. We do think that very soon after the victory they will come back, but our duty as a society is to create such conditions for them that they will be satisfied. So we continue in our work with the Veterans Ministry, and we will try to help to create the systems that will decrease barriers and make services accessible, like digital services. We will also work on with the Ministry of Veterans and the Ministry of Reintegration. We will work on developing the system of services and communities. We will help and support our communities so that they do develop their systems. We will also pay attention to legal help and assistance to the veterans. One of the activities that we provide for is support for the information work that will help the veterans to get to know about the services that are accessible to them. So we think that we will launch the information campaign that will help to informationally support the state so that the veterans know what they can get, what is already there for them, and what is in other plans. We will continue to support civil society, civic society, in psychosocial sphere, in other activities. One of the powerful focuses that we have is the work with businesses. And here we look in two directions. First, this is our direct work with the big businesses, so they adapt their activities on the employment of veterans, and another direction is support for entrepreneurial activities of veterans. We will be happy to answer questions. The question to the Deputy Minister is, how do you think, are you on the track? Look, the matter is that even when I was at the Ukrainian Veterans Foundation, we were closely cooperating with the IREX. We were conducting surveys every 6 months. So the Ministry for Veterans is constantly monitoring the attitude of veterans to systemic issues in order to try to regulate them, because the Ministry for the Veterans Affairs has to be the coordinator of the policy pertaining to veterans in all the executive bodies of power. We have absolutely identical views, because this is the survey and we have to have realities in our minds. The priority of the ministry is the health of the veterans, because we cannot give a job to everyone until a person is physically fit. Until they are in the hospital, they won't be employed. This is logical. So we've been paying for quite some time attention to the dissatisfaction of veterans with medical treatment, especially this pertains to local authorities. As Deputy Minister, I am rather tired of seeing posts in the Facebook, like people were registered for a certain medical examination, but they only will be able to attend it in a year's time. And I have to phone a hospital and explain them that they have to prioritize veterans, but then the problem sometimes turns out that the veteran has not informed them that they are a veteran, and the doctors have not asked them whether they are veterans. So we have to cooperate with IREX in this sphere, and for the second week in a row, we've been conducting the working group with the Ministry of Defense as well, and there was a representative from the Public Health Ministry as well, in order to construct a single system. We actually cannot catch people on their way from the military service to their civil life. We know that most of the veterans are provided services in civilian hospitals or other medical institutions. But we have to build a system where people will be transferred in a fluent way from one institution to another. We also do not understand the system of approach to rehabilitation. Why the guys are being transferred from one institution to another after 14 or 21 days, and the length of the programs is 24, 21 or 14 days. And it happens so that people cannot finish their rehabilitation within this span of time. because there are also psychologists who work there, and during these 14 or 21 days you have 2 contacts with a psychologist. Then you are in another institution and you again have 2 contacts with a psychologist. This is not psychotherapy, this is not psychological help. So we have to revamp this system where veterans are concerned, where they are treated not like civilian persons, but as people who have their special needs and special features. Even from the medical point of view, we cannot treat a veteran from the point of view of a common civilian. But look, these are guys who at 25 years of age have the state of health deteriorated because of freezing, because of bad nourishment, because of other specifics of the military service. They have problems because they were carrying all this ammunition and body armor on them. We have to revamp this system for the veterans, because American research testifies that veterans are ill or sick oftener than civilians. That's why we have to have special treatment for children, for people who are older than 65, and we have to, as a country which is at war, where we have very huge numbers of veterans, we have to review the system. This is not just a wish, this is the request and demand of the time, which is corroborated by the data of the survey and also by the data of international organizations. This is the world global standards that the system of transfer in the NATO, where ministers of defense, ministers of public health, and ministers for veterans affairs interact, and these standards should be implemented in Ukraine as well. Psychological assistance, we understand very well that veterans are often coming from very small territorial communities, and we remember very well our historical context stemming from the Soviet Union and the 1970s, where the psychological service was punitive. That's why in many villages they still see psychological assistance as a punitive measure, and our veterans very often come from small villages. So we have to invent methods in order to understand how we involve veterans and how we provide them with a psychological help. I am glad to see, guys, that we are meeting on the topic of the sports of the war veterans. And of course, this is not about the sports of results. This is about restoration, rehabilitation. When the guys see that they are not alone, that they are not safe isolated, I see the guys here who have gone themselves through this, and they can confirm this. As far as legal aid is concerned, we, with the Ukrainian Veterans Fund and the IREX in Ukraine, have launched this legal aid, and you could understand by the data you got from different oblasts where something does not work, and you could start to react to this. This is a very good history, because the data should be collected and the data should be used, put to use. And we should build the entire system based on the data. Without data, we do not know what the veterans actually need. I would like also to note, to emphasize a very interesting fact. When we were talking to people in remote areas, why the veterans think that the state does not treat them well, the answer was, make it digital, make it digital. The veterans are rather vague about what the state is. For instance, the worker of the social service. Is this a state representative or your neighbor? And this, of course, does not allow us to influence in a normal way some processes. We have to dig deeper in order to understand what does not work, because there's always someone or something that does not work. Same as in business processes, like you have a person responsible for a process, and if something does not work there, then you have to launch audit and relaunch the business and its part again. So we would like to know from the veterans what does not work, so that they are honest with us in telling this, because we are like non-seeing kittens when we try to find something of value. No, you should not look for different posts on Facebook and then phone wherever this does not work. As far as employment and providing jobs is concerned, we have said that 60% of veterans plan to create their own business after they come back. We also understand that this is not a very attainable figure, because not everyone can be a business person, but there's a hunger for personnel in the business. And this is the world crisis. I won't, of course, snatch some bread from the business representative. He'll talk about this himself. But we have to work not only with veterans, but with all the personnel, with all the colleagues who meet this veteran when they are employed. And the business has to reform, taking into account the realities that we live in. You know, the experience we had during COVID, when the businesses reformed and adapted to COVID, they survived. The others have not. So the story about business is that when you want to survive, you reform. Please reform, not just talk about some state-provided guaranteed. We have to understand that the state does not have enough resource to provide tax benefits for those who employ veterans. Okay, let's continue. Let's talk about employment. I think that for any business now, the employing veterans is the strategic focus of attention, which has to be there all the time, especially when we talk about big businesses. As Ruslana told us, it is important to understand whether the business has adapted to this. I can only corroborate what the colleagues have said, and I must say that it is very painful for us that very few companies understand that it is important to work with veterans. It is important to not integrate veterans, but integrate the companies into the veterans world. The answer why the business should do this has two aspects. first, because you cannot act in a different way, because these are people who have staked everything when they went to defend us. They make possible our work, and it is not just not to help them to come back to a peaceful life and not to create comfortable conditions for them. The second aspect is very pragmatic. This is the labor market. We in Ukrnafta have more than 700 vacancies, vacant jobs. We understand that almost 1 million people are now serving in military. And there's, of course, justice in the phrase that when we mobilize a person, we mobilize their family. We have 3 million people who are in this or that way involved in war, or who were. And these people will decide whether they want to work in this or that organization. So the company should think even now, what is the answer to the question, what is my motive in joining your company? What were you doing while I was protecting you, defending you at the front line? And of course, my motivation is not more profit for the owner. This has to be sensible, and this has to be deep. We have to be prepared for those people to come back, because within 2 years, every business will have veterans or members of their families. They will change the management methods and many, many other things. The way we prepare for this will become a fundamental for whether we will survive as a business. As of now, there's almost 1,000 people in our company who went to the front. Most of them were volunteers. Regrettably, we have 37 people who have been killed in action. Last year, we have launched a program which we call Shoulder to Shoulder. It's about facilitating their comeback to a peaceful life. And of course, the data rules. It is better to come to our veterans and ask them about their painful spots. We went to Borislav, Dolina, Ohtyrka, Priluki, Nadvirna, where our company works. We talked to our veterans. We asked them what, as an organization, we can do as a company to make your life easier. And the first thing they told us was, we do not need anything. Please help our brothers in arms at the front line. The next issue was about their state of health. And the third thing was about them as people who have combat experience are rather different from other people. We may look like other people, but inside we are different. Please help everyone in the company understand that we are different. Teach them to interact with us so that we are comfortable and the rest of people are comfortable. So it is understood by the veterans, but the people who do not have combat experience, they do not realize this. They have to be taught. And on the basis of all this, we started the comprehensive program to socialize and reintegrate our veterans. I can talk for quite a long time about this. I would only like to emphasize a very important moment. This is the tradition of commemorating those people that the companies should launch. It costs nothing, but it is so important. We in Ukrnafta have an everyday, daily moment, minute of silence, and Sometimes we do forget about what is happening, but this minute of silence returns you to the context. And another important thing is that we created a virtual memorial of remembrance where we have put all the information about our colleagues who have been killed in action. You should have seen how much feedback we got from the brothers in arms, from families, about the importance that the company remembers about them. And I'm talking to you and I'm really shivering because I'm full of emotions. This is so humane, but many people do not do this. I can talk a lot about this, but I would like to emphasize specifically the importance of remembering. And of course, the creation of inclusive society goes without saying. Inclusive conditions. I think this is all for now. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your experience. We, of course, would like to see more such companies with such understanding of the problem and influence. I know that we have Andrii Kucher here, whom I want to offer to speak. He is a veteran. He is head of the NGO Resilient 300. How do you react to what you have said? First of all, thank you for such events, because the program of reintegration from IREX is almost my family now. My first grant for my program was from IREX in Ukraine, and my example is a motivation for other veterans to effect projects, not to be afraid to apply for them. As for how I reflect, how I think about this, it is important for me. As usual, I have my 50 cents to add, because I want to report on something that we have done. And I want to talk about examples to explain. So, medical services, first of all, the survey says that there has to be the systemization of medical services. Let's, however, think about the aspect that the state does have a lot of problems, but they are doing quite a lot. The issue of communication is responsible for 70% of what is being done. There's a lot of rehabilitation centers and institutions, including civil society organization, and the problem is that the guys do not know about this. Some tour in hospitals for the second year in a row, and I always see that the guys do not know about this. That's why they actually need me and stimulate in those hospitals so that I can talk to girls and guys about the services that are accessible, and you have only to touch it with your hand. Then, of course, there's a problem about the illnesses you get at the front line and the illnesses you have as a result of wounds. The veterans that I have been serving with are being erased physically. Let's look at the age of our servicemen. It's 40 plus. And this is a closed topic. You cannot really find any practical things here. The guys from the front line are asking me to help, but there's a lot that I cannot do. So I address you, saying that those guys and girls who at the moment now have illnesses, not the wounds. They should be treated in a special way. Let's talk about oncology. What we know about oncology on the front line, nothing. But this does really influence what is happening on the front line. We have to make this efficient. We have to know about this. And the issue of the wounded people, which I am lobbying all the time. There are different wounds, of course, and we still have not solved the issue of the individual approach to wounds. Because I, for instance, I have not got the treatment applicable to my wounds, and my state has not improved, and I still want to come back in war to the front line. 90% of my brothers in arms want to go back and fight, while people come back even with very serious and amputations, serious wounds. I know such brothers in arms who have gone back to fight in spite of their amputations. The state, international partners like Reintegration program of the IREX have to pay attention to how the services are being provided. This is all very individual. Psychological support, huge demand. However, the guys on the front line have difficulties with this because in your company you don't have enough specialists, and they are waiting for quite some time until they can go to a medical institution and get real help. So, in reality, many of my brothers in arms do understand the importance of psychological support, and motivation is, of course, very important. And those people whom I talk to are ready to be taught to provide psychological help. Yesterday I talked to our POW who was in the last exchange batch, and he said that he was prepared to become a psychologist, to study for 4 years in order to later help POWs as he is. And we have to look at the legal aid. There has to be a checked network of lawyers who could consult our brothers in arms, because there are, of course, charlatans. I have met guys and girls who were paying 15,000 hryvnias for just a couple of letters that a lawyer launches, and then they vanish, and people again getting disaffected. I have not received any single payment, one-time payment. Let me remind you that I am entitled to 100,000 hryvnias for my wound. This is the issue of our legal system. One of the hardest issues is communicating with your military unit. So we need the network here. Demobilization and putting you out of stuff is very important. For 2 months after being put outside of the stuff, you get 21,000 hryvnia. But then you come back to 500 or 600 hryvnias a month. I was in such a position for 4 months. As far as accommodation is concerned, there's a rather moderate interest, because most of the people understanding how many documents and papers they have to file, they just abandoning this idea. I won't do this personally. Same as I did not do anything to get my remuneration, especially after I went through the inferno of medical commissions. I do confirm the interest of the veterans in education, and many veterans are prepared to cover this personal hunger. The business is suffering from this. They do not have enough personnel, and there are constant legal changes. You have to cultivate the stories of success. I have a friend, a brother-in-law, Vasa Starko, from the west of Ukraine. He is being invited to different events all the time so that he explains how veterans' business is important. Benefits, of course. There's a huge request and demand for understanding about those benefits, because there's a lot being done. You can apply for benefits digitally. You can even stay at home doing this, and this can be all done through applications. You should inform about this. Most of us veterans are looking disdainfully at benefits, because while you are at war and while you are, let's say, being treated, our sense of honor does not allow us to pursue any benefits. I would say that almost 70% of the military think only that a benefit gives you the right only to use public transportation free. And most of the benefits are being used by people who have their families, because they have benefits as far as their communal charges are concerned and other stuff. However, we have changes as far as our communal charges are concerned, because they have the Cabinet of Ministers is changing this again. We have to know who initiated them and who will explain them. And the transfer from military service to civilian life, very complicated topic, because I all the time hear, is the society ready? Are veterans ready? But I would say that veterans are part of the society. We should not be divided on this issue. We are, as veterans, the mirror of our society. We have to, when we are talking about the minute of silence at an enterprise, we have to remember that every minute our guys are dying at the front line. And we have to understand this. The blackouts have not arisen themselves. These are the after effects of the actions of our enemy. I tried to stop at 9 a.m. every several times when we formally have the minute of silence, but people have not actually supported me, and one of them said, "You're an idiot to stop here at this time, because there's a sign forbidden to stop." But I at that time see my friends and brothers in arms who are dying on the front line. It is important to create a powerful veterans movement. We have to stimulate the creation of public organizations, consultative bodies with state authorities, so that we do not see the situation when the point about rotation, for instance, disappears on the eve of considering this bill in the parliament. It is important that veterans should be involved in making these decisions. It's not about exaggerating the significance of the veterans, but if you're a doctor, would you like an engine driver to decide instead of you? One of the proven facts of ways of reintegrating veterans into this society is veteran sport. I adore this sphere. I have gone through this. I remember my brothers in arms whom I involved to the Invincible Games after their amputations. They are now on the Ukrainian national teams. In spite of their grave wounds, grave amputations, you have to cultivate it. And of course, the families should know where they should go and whom they shall address when their veteran is wounded. And the communities, I would like to support this very much. Yes, the communities have a lot of opportunities to work with veterans. You have to have more projects directed at communities. I have a project going to different communities with equipment for inclusive veteran sport and showing them. So yes, you should involve communities. I wanted to talk fast because I wanted to mention all the problems. Glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes. Thank you for your systemic comments. And if you decode them, then you have almost prepared strategy for veterans work. Anyone has any comments? Or Yuri Samoylenko, head of the All-Ukrainian Union of the Veterans of the fight for the independence of Ukraine in the 20th century. Thank you for having invited me, but I do not fit into the program that you are launching. Of course, our union is doing quite a lot, although in a smaller scale. We do not have such opportunities as you have. I look at my neighbor and I see that this is me 30 years ago. I am 75 plus. So you are going to be like myself in 30 years. The All-Ukrainian Veterans Union. Ruslana, I don't know I don't know your background. You said that you know a historical background. What do you know about founding fathers of Ukraine? I know quite a lot about founding fathers. I know about my father, who is a person of that generation. He's defending Ukraine. My brother is defending Ukraine, so I am quite involved in these topics. We know quite a lot about different organizations and initiatives. I can tell you that this has been worked on at the ministry, that we have to introduce amendments to the legal system about veterans public organizations, because if they have certain programs to help NGOs, they have to be veterans NGOs. This should be the direct target audience and direct target aid, so that not everyone is involved into veterans help who are not veterans. Otherwise, this aid will go not to the veterans, but it will go for trainings for trainers. I have a question, a specific and concrete question. I'm just listening. We have to live within realities. We all understand that at the moment the state service is being decreased. I have not come to ask for help. My question is very simple. Why you forget about the sea of people, about veterans who were there before the independence of Ukraine? They were being prosecuted. When you were talking about the benefits, I remember now the Roman band at one of the events. One of the singers who is an old person, he fell because he was hungry. Give him tea and sugar. That's about the benefits. So that I respect our young veterans, but not them. I don't want them to be in the shoes of that singer or in my shoes. I am grateful to everyone. I'll tell you that you should treat us veterans of the fight for the independence of Ukraine. We can also say that the stigmatization of the society as far as veterans are concerned, they are already present in attitudes toward the anti-terrorist operation veterans, and that's about the information work that has to be done. For instance, the first survey about the attitude to the veterans was in August 2021, because previously they have been measuring only the attitude towards the armed forces of Ukraine. And 30% of respondents said that they think that veterans are veterans of the World War II. So we in the society did not understand that these young people who were demobilized earlier, who were in the reserve or were outlisted, and we have quite a lot of them who are traumatized, they have again taken arms in their hands on the 24th of February, and they again went to defend Ukraine. So 30% of people of our society, after Bucha, after all the world was talking about this, 30% did not perceive them as veterans. So this is the problem of us all, the society. This problem is within us, and we have to explain to our society that there are different veterans. We have mobilization now, and this is not contract or terms or draft. Our veterans have different ages, they have different profiles. Some of them are MBAs, and you have to understand this while giving them jobs. Most of the guys who are defending us have MBAs, and they are being offered loaders jobs. So you have to know the profile, the portrait of a veteran, and it should be used in order to provide for the basics of the veterans policy in Ukraine. However, I will still emphasize that our priority number one is the health of a veteran, because we won't be able to do anything, we won't be able to provide any future to the veterans until they stand on their feet and feel themselves comfortable and physically normal to the degree it is possible in their state. We have another comment, I think. Comment. Please, technicians, it does work. Hello everyone. I am 68 years old, and I'm a veteran of the Russian-Ukrainian war, anti-terrorist organization 2014-2015. I was not invited. My name is Oleksandr Tkachenko. I am the leading research fellow of the psychology department of the Shevchenko University. I am engaged in a veterans project now in cooperation with Alena Vinnytska Foundation. In 10 years after I have returned, well, my desire to implement everything that you were talking about appeared 10 years ago. The understanding was there, but the opportunity was not. Now we have some money and we are succeeding to some extent. I think that with our project we are one step ahead of everything that is happening otherwise. The project called Veterans Hut, Veterans Home, is aimed at accepting the veteran who is demobilized and give him or her back to the society, more or less adapted and oriented at developing their own lives within their own understanding and their own understanding of how they can serve the society. We understood that psychologists who are working now, they are peaceful, they do not have the experience of combat action, they are not more involved into the feelings of people who survived the war. So we mostly invite people who are veterans, real veterans, or members of their families. 20 people we engage now, so within the 3 months, and you said very correctly that the person who is ill, they do not think about the profession, they think about survival. Same happens to your psyche, to your mind. The veteran has to adjust their minds to a new disposition compared to what was there before they went to war. As a rule, people come back with a different outlook, different world outlook and perception. And the society does not understand them as a rule, sometimes in a rather aggressive way. And of course, there were cases when people set themselves afire or they tried to blow themselves with a grenade. And now we have trained people to react to the society in a different way. So within 3 months, the veterans have their minds corrected, and we orient them to learn, to study at the university named after Taras Shevchenko. I would like to add that on the 1st of September, we have launched with your manager or leader this chair of psychology at the university. And yesterday, I am very, very grateful to the business that did this. And I hope that very soon the university named after Shevchenko will tell about this good story that one of the businesses has paid for the studies of those veterans, for learning of those veterans who went there to become peer-to-peer psychologists. And it will emerge not from somewhere, it will emerge from when you start to do this. But of course this is in the handbrake regime. We have to make it systemic. When organizations and charitable funds address us, we then locate the business which connects to the Institute of Higher Learning, and this is how it works. But I would like to also emphasize that the society has to understand that there is nothing that happens for free. Anyone really pays for something. This is either the state budget distributed between different authorities or local budgets, but in fact this is state budget as well because it is being subvented from the center. You have to understand this, and I think that the business will support me because, you have to pay for everything, although sometimes we say that this is free. Nothing is being provided for free. Everything requires a donation or something like this. So this was a rather successful case for us when the head of this charitable organization addressed me, and I found the business who were quick in covering the expenses. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for revealing your problems so that we can help address them. And thank you for that the payment for this veterans will be. You have actually preempted my question to you, but still, the state that does give this money, but business is more conscientious in this because they have veterans. We think that 2% were mobilized, including some people from our university, but the business understands better. Look, even where your case is concerned, we have in detail looked at it with the rector when they gave me the budget for those guys. We're talking about the veterans because you have submitted the candidatures of civilian persons as well, but we as Veterans Ministry were concerned only with paying for the veterans because sometimes they want to add the civilian persons to the veterans, including in the cases of traveling abroad. You should not use veterans in such a way. There was a calculation there and quite a lot of learning of these veterans does not, by the way, cost very much. You told us about $1 million, but in reality this was about 200,000 for the veterans, and the rest went to civilian persons. So it was covered to a great extent by the state. So please look at the calculation and you'll see that the state is paying for this money so that the veterans could learn. But of course within certain limits. Yes, it does not cover the entire need, but it's not a secret that through job centers the state provides money for learning up to 25,000 hryvnias. But let's go further. I see that you understand the situation. You are next to the business. The matter is that our project provides for the scaling of this system, and the key here is the development. And our project is aimed at the development, not at the treatment, because treatment concerns only 20% of veterans. Which university is this? This Shevchenko University. And you teach at the university? Yes, I am the doctor at the chair of psychology, at the development psychology. So you know about this, and know about this calculation. Yes, you know that quite a lot was covered by the state, and you know that there were more civilians there than military. But our civilians are wives who actually worry about veterans. And you know, I know this because I'm a wife also. Please review the data. I think that such veterans' homes should be created and can be created linked to every such development center, and then we can take a veteran who may be involved in this, and they will be able to join as peer-to-peer, and the mass will then know whom to address to. Thank you very much. I hope that your Center for Veterans Development will show a great number of educated and requalified, retrained persons, and we will then, of course, be able to tell how many veterans you were able to re-educate. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for those who helped to develop the policies for veterans. Thank you, our armed forces, our veterans, those who empower us to continue such work. Glory to Ukraine.